Yeah, we should probably record a podcast or something.
Oh, yeah. Welcome to RPG Book Club LongCast, the podcast where we play a little bit of a big video game and talk about how it makes us feel. I am Sam.
I am Bernard.
And I'm Maddie Grace.
And today we are starting the second saga of LongCast entitled FabuLOng Nova CASTulus, where we play the Final Fantasy XIII trilogy one bit at a time.
It should be, hopefully, better than .hack.gu.
Yeah, we're really, really excited about this because, quickly, have we all... No, Sam, you haven't played FF13, right?
Yeah, I have not played Final Fantasy XIII at all.
Okay,
But despite this, you had a save file for it.
I honestly, like, that freaks me out. Okay,
maybe you're in a fugue state.
I've made the joke, Final Fugue 13. I bought this PlayStation new. I have been the only person that's ever touched it, ever done anything with it. I bought, as you remember, like weeks ago, I bought Final Fantasy 13 for the first time. It was probably months ago, actually. But like, all I did was I put it in and I looked to make sure I could read the text on my CRT, make sure it wasn't like tiny HD text, and I could, and I'm like, okay, that's all I need, and I turned it off. And then when I loaded it up the other day, save file number 1 was in the middle of chapter 3, and I don't know how it happened, and it literally freaks me out. I don't I have no answers for it. So I did technically play it back in the day, but I was with my good friend Jesse Clary. It was the week that I graduated Baylor, because you graduate in like the teens of May, and getting an apartment, it happens at the end of a month. And so we had moved to Austin on the 1st of May, and I was crashing in Jesse's dorm at Baylor just to finish out college. And I didn't have any of my games, and I was looking through on his 360, and he had Final Fantasy 13, and I remember playing it for just a second and looking at all of the crap in the data logs and being like, oh my god, they like Mass Effect did a Final Fantasy game. This looks really cool. I'm not beating this in a week. There's no way I can actually get into it. And I stopped and played like Psychonauts instead or something. But that's all I remember from that time was, oh, hey, look, there's a codex, and that was it. But yeah, but so do you guys remember what you were doing in your life when the Final Fantasy 13 trailer dropped?
I don't remember what I was doing in my life last week.
That's a good question. No, I don't, but I remember it being very, very, very hype. Also,
I don't remember
if you recall, I remember the trailer, first of all. Well, it was at E3, so I mean, the answer to what I'm doing with my life is easy. I was watching the like
news
Sony. I was like watching the live stream of E3 2006 or something, right?
I don't think you could in 2000.
You're right. In 2006, they would not have had live streams, so I guess I would have been watching a live update feed on Kotaku.com. Was I a Kotaku head by that point? I think I was. I think it's early 2006. I was probably a Kotaku head. Although if they didn't have one, I would have been on like GameSpot or something. And then immediately after the stream, going and watching the trailer possibly on Game Trailers and not on YouTube, maybe.
So I remember getting, because I was subscribed to Electronic Gaming Monthly, and they had the big post E3 blowout on Final Fantasy 13, and they had everything, and I thought it all looked super duper cool. And I remember watching the trailer for the first time on G4 like Attack of the Show or whatever the fuck was like, oh, here's the cool shit from this week, and they showed the trailer, and I thought that it was legit. But I specifically remember like, because there was like 7 pages or whatever in EGM about Final Fantasy 13 and one tiny picture of Final Fantasy Versus 13, and I was like, that's the game for me. That Noctis looks fucking cool. It looked like Kingdom Hearts, but like grown up, and I was like, that looks fucking great. I can't wait for that one to come out in 1 year and not 12 years.
Yeah, so for those of y'all who maybe younger people in the audience or people who aren't as much of that kind of gamer, FF13 is a very interesting game in the series. It got an interesting place in the series' history. For a brief little background, and I swear there's a reason for this. Here's the release dates of various Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy 87, Final Fantasy 2 88, Final Fantasy 3 90, 4 91, 5 92, Final Fantasy 6 94, Final Fantasy 7 97, 3-year gap. Final Fantasy 8 and 9 came out in 99 and 2000. 2001 was FF10. 2002 was FF11. They're really booking it. And then FF12 didn't come out until 2006. So it was a very, very long gap. And then Final Fantasy 13 didn't come out 2009, which I guess for years isn't the longest gap ever, but it felt like it, right?
Especially because 12 was so polarizing. 12 was back to pure high fantasy. It had the Gambit system that the first batch of isn't as good as the one we have now, and so people really didn't like it.
And before that, it was Final Fantasy 11, which was also a huge departure.
Was an MMO. So so basically, the Final Fantasy series was making one game every 1 or 2 years consistently for literally 13 straight years. And then after FF10 in 2001, it was just like a hard stop, which happened with a lot of game series. It's because what happened around that time, graphics got a lot better and games became a lot more expensive to develop. This is the point where games stopped taking 1 or 2 years to make and started taking
5 years to make.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years to make. And this happened across the board, right? Especially with the transition to HD. So for me, I mostly remember the excruciatingly long wait for FF12 because when FF10 came out, I didn't have a PS2. I played a bit of it at a friend's house, was mesmerized. I got into the entire genre of JRPGs between the releases of FF10 and FF12.
Yeah, same.
Because of I discovered emulation basically and emulated FF's 1, 4, 6. Eventually bought a PS2 and played games like FF10, Xenosaga, and a bunch of PS1 games. My first playing of FF7 was on the PC because I found out there was a PC version of it and played that version in 2003. So after I got insanely JRPG pilled circa 2002, 2003, then it was this long wait for Final Fantasy 12, right? Getting every bit of information that was posted online, just totally obsessed with it. They drop one piece of music and put it on the website, and I would listen to it 50 times, right? Finally, they drop it, and as Sam said, it's hugely polarizing. I thought it was a masterpiece at the time, and I still do. I was right. But it's the series that everyone has loved every single game is now all of a sudden they made an MMO. Then many years later, they made a very polarizing, weird game. And now many, many, many years later is FF13. So 13, there was a lot of weight on its shoulders. Also, it was the first game on PS3. And if you recall, every game studio in the entire world, particularly Japanese studios, though, had a lot of trouble adjusting to the HD era of the 360 of the PS3. Partially is due to the fact that the PS3 had, if you recall, the weirdest architecture in the world.
Oh,
absolutely. It was an absolute nightmare to develop for, and because Japanese studios tended to prioritize Sony consoles and Western studios tended to prioritize the Xbox 360, it was a big struggle for them. You see this with a lot of game series on PS3. They had a lot of trouble, lots of delays, lots of games that also if I'm sure both of y'all recall the games that came out in the early PS3 era are almost unrecognizable as coming from the same console as late PS3 era.
Yeah.
Like FF13 is actually an exception because it has phenomenal graphics. But like,
well, that was a couple years into the era.
True,
even.
exactly.
Sure.
But yeah, but like, pick some early PS3 game, I don't know what, and compare it to like The Last of Us, and you're like, this is not the same console, right?
Yeah.
And that's because the PS3 was simultaneously unimaginably powerful and unimaginably difficult to actually make use of the power of it. But Square, being Square and never being lax on the graphics front, released an absolutely jaw-droppingly gorgeous video game in the year 2009 with FF13. And yeah, they announced it in 2006, I think before FF12 came out, but the same year. And they announced, in typical Square fashion, 3 games at once. They announced,
of course.
They announced not Final Fantasy 13, but the FabuLOng Nova CASTulus, which I believe I don't think that's actually any language. I think it's made up, although it sounds sort of Latinate. I believe it's the new tale of the crystals. So they're doing the whole like, oh, we're bringing back crystals because FF10 and 13, 12 didn't have it. So we're doing the fan service, bringing back crystals things, which makes it seem like it's like a throwback. It's not. That's a weird thing to do. Yes, they announced FF13. The first trailer involves Lightning having an extremely cool fight scene on a train. It's basically the first cutscene of this game. Including some of the exact same camera shots. Later, we all realized that's all they had when they made that. They had not made a game. They had made a cool video of a lady on a train and had a general vibe that they wanted to have a super fast-paced, modern, slick battle system that looked like a cool action movie. That's all they had. They also announced Final Fantasy Versus 13, which was a really cool trailer where a dark-haired, broody-looking Tetsuya Nomura-ass boy, these are all Nomura, but this guy looked the most Nomura, is sitting boredly in a big throne in the dark, and then some soldiers show up, and he summons a bazillion swords and levitates them, and then fights these dudes. Again, that is all they had at the time. Later, literally 9 years later, 10 years later, that game came out as FF15. And to everyone, including my surprise, the scene in the trailer is almost note for note in the game, except it's almost at the end of the game.
Also, to my surprise, the game was fucking great.
Yeah.
It was in development hell for a decade, and it was great.
And it rebranded and became an open world game, and to everyone's surprise was fucking fantastic. And they also announced Final Fantasy Agito 13, which later became Final Fantasy Type 0, not to be confused with a different game that came out later called Final Fantasy Agito.
Yes.
So the game announced in 2006 as part of the FabuLOng Nova CASTulus, Final Fantasy Agito 13, became Final Fantasy Type 0. The game that actually was released as Final Fantasy Agito is unrelated and was not announced in 2006. And I've heard that Type 0 is awesome. I actually purchased Final Fantasy Type 0 back when it came out solely because I wanted to play the FF15 demo. It wasn't solely. I also heard Type 0 was great, but I didn't have time to actually play it. It was a real MGS2 demo in Zone of the Enders sort of moment for me. What were you saying, Sam?
Yeah. So I picked up Type 0 because there was some Black Friday sale at GameStop probably 7 years ago now, but their Black Friday sale was just like buy 2 get 2 free JRPGs, like specifically, and it was weird because like who cares, but like I care, but like not at a GameStop type thing.
It is
and
strange.
So I went in and I got the entire Disgaea series, and I picked up Final Fantasy Type 0, and I knew literally nothing about it. I just saw a Nomura ass guy on the front, and I was like, whatever, it's a Final Fantasy game for my PS4, I'm going to take it. And I still haven't played it, but
and that was actually a port. It was actually a Vita game, right, or maybe even PSP.
Yeah,
it was a PSP game that it didn't come out on PSP outside Japan, I think, but the HD version did.
Yeah. But yeah, so FF13 to slightly finish the FF13 story. FF10. So FF13 shares a lot of lineage with FF10 and not 12. Like FF10, FF10, which we've played on this podcast. This game's a sequel to that game in many ways, honestly. FF10 had two composers. It was the first game not entirely composed by Nobuo Uematsu. It had three composers: Uematsu, some other guy whose name I forget, and Masashi Hamauzu, who is my favorite video game composer. And Hamauzu gave it kind of a new little vibe. Hamauzu is the sole composer of FF13. It is his largest soundtrack, and I would say his most musically complex and most diverse, and it is an absolute masterpiece. Later games that he made, he had helpers, co-composers, but this game is entirely his from top to bottom, which is pretty impressive given how big and broad it is. Its character design and world design and stuff is by Tetsuya Nomura, who, of course, in between the releases of FF10 and FF13 had become extremely associated with the Kingdom Hearts series. He extremely decided that he had a very particular vibe.
I think four or five of them had come out at that point. I don't remember if the DS games
I forget how many, but the entire rise of Tetsuya Nomura as we know him today, I would say happened between FF10 and 13. I'm not saying he wasn't already a big shot, he was, but he was just the guy who made cool looking characters for FF7 and 10. Kingdom Hearts was his first directorial role, right? Yeah. So that was a whole thing. Like the positioning of the series had really changed a whole lot, right? It is produced by Yoshinori Kitase, who is one of the most common FF guys. Directed by Motomu Toriyama, who I actually forget what he later became famous for and did a lot of. He did co-direct FF7 Remake though.
He was also a co-director on Final Fantasy X. I believe,
nice,
or a designer on it.
Yeah. So the point is,
he started directing with Final Fantasy XII, but his gameography goes all the way back to Bahamut Lagoon. He's been doing it nonstop, basically since.
So basically, what I'm saying is, this game, even though this game was intended as a almost like a reboot, a reimagining, a huge change of pace, a sharp left turn for the series from all the same people who had been making the series for the last decade, which is very important. FF12 was super different because it was by different people. FF12 was, what if we got most of the people behind Final Fantasy Tactics to make the new mainstream FF game? Same composer, same director, same character designer, etc. So it was like they brought in new blood. FF13 though is interesting because it's not the new blood; it's the return of the same old. All the same people who did FFs 8, 9, 10 came back for 13, but thought that it was time for a big change, which is what we saw with a lot of games in this era. Final thing to wrap this up. The reason we're doing this now, the way we're doing it, I think it's interesting playing this after 7 Remake has come out because that game clearly takes a lot of influence from this game, which made me want to revisit it. This game got 2 sequels, FF12, FF13-2, and FF13-3. I know it wasn't called that, whatever. That's interesting because if you recall, they originally announced 3 FF13 games at the same time. 2 of them became no longer FF13 games because they realized announcing 3 games at once and overcommitting to the series was stupid. But then they went and made 2 sequels anyway that weren't originally planned. They just did.
Yeah.
Which is really funny, especially because most people didn't like FF13. It was, to say it's divisive is frankly an understatement. I would say it mostly was just not liked. I didn't like it. So the fact that they made a sequel and then made another one is really weird. And pretty much by the time the 3rd one came out, no one gave a shit anymore, except the few people that actually played 13-3 actually said it was amazing. And then over the course of many years after that point, the entire series has been kind of started to be revisited and reconsidered by the community at large. And now a lot of people say that actually FF13 and 13.2 were good all along. We'll see.
Yeah. Famously, Tim Rogers, when he started his Action Putt and YouTube channel, the first thing he talked about was how he was too mean to Final Fantasy 13, and it's not a 2 out of 4, it's a 3 out of 4.
Yeah.
And
I will say, if you obviously we're talking about Tim Rogers' Final Fantasy 13 review is one of the best things he ever wrote. It is a masterpiece of game criticism. It is like 20,000 words long. Yeah. It is an absolute masterpiece. And he gave it 2 out of 4 stars, which is the same grade that he gave BioShock and Metal Gear Solid 4. So this game has a lot in common with MGS4. I think it's a PS3 game that had trouble transitioning into 3D and also is very divisive and not 3D. And a lot of people think that it sucks, but also it's kind of got a lot of good things about it. And it got 2 out of 4 from Tim Rogers. But yes, as Sam said, he later retconned his review to be a 3 out of 4 star review.
Yeah. One final thing on that before we dive in. So that his review of Final Fantasy 13, because I was consigned to never play it because a lot of people didn't like it. It's stuck on the PS3. Well, it's not anymore, but it was at the time. So it's like, well, I'm not going to ever get around to doing it. So I read it, and like 19,000 of the words are like tearing apart the game bit by bit lovingly. And then the last 1,000 words are like, yeah, but then I played through it 3 times and it was the only thing I did for an entire summer. So I guess it's actually kind of good. And I was like, I fuck with that. I fuck with like it being a problematic game, like bad. I don't want to say bad game, but being a bad game, but then you still love it anyways. And so I made these chuckleheads play it with me.
Yeah, I'm going to try not to just ape Tim Rogers too much as we discuss this game. Though I will say, in our first 2.5 hours of playing it, his core critiques of the game from the review he wrote so long ago, 100% accurate. Regardless of whether the game is good or bad, everything he said that is bad about it back in his famous review that I've read so many times is, I'm looking at it with fresh eyes and being like, yeah, no, that's the extremely accurate assessment of what's going on with this game. And yeah, so.
So my experience with this game, this will be very quick. I played it like around when it came out. I was very excited about it because it was like the first Final Fantasy game to come out since I'd really gotten into JRPGs. Like, I'd played Pokemon and Paper Mario when I was a kid, but like I didn't know what a JRPG was. I was very excited about it. I played it. I didn't like it. I don't really remember anything about it, except I remember even though I didn't like it, I was blown away by the ending cutscene. That's all I remember, really.
Oh, yeah. I should share a little more context about my playing it. I didn't play it when it came out, even though I just said all that stuff. Here's the thing. Was I following its release with bated breath for its entire development process? Yes. You might wonder, then why didn't you play it when it came out? And the answer to that is that in between 2002 and 2009, I fell deeply, madly in love with JRPGs, and then fell out of love with JRPGs. To be fair, it wasn't that I stopped liking them. It's more that, as we've discussed before, there was a very, very bad period for about 5 years or so where they weren't good. That's also why I didn't play Blue Dragon or Lost Odyssey when they first came out, despite looking forward to them. Basically, what happened was I played Metal Gear Solid for the first time, and then I became a huge Metal Gear fan and kind of ended up being more into action games for 5, 6, 7 years. And then later, when I got to, eventually I ended up revisiting JRPGs. So I played this game in college, freshman year. So I would have either played it in the fall of 2010 or the spring of 2011. I played it in my little bitty dorm room on a CRT, on a tiny CRT, as God intended.
Yeah.
Also, I want to point out something interesting. You said it, quote, wasn't stuck on the PS3 anymore. But it's interesting that this game has never gotten a re-release or anything. Like, it's available on Xbox 360, and the future Xboxes are backwards compatible. And there's even X enhancements, and it's absolutely gorgeous on an Xbox One X or Xbox Series X. But it's never actually been re-released.
Is it on PC?
Time.
Yeah, it was released on the PC in 2014.
Oh. Well, it was never re-released on consoles.
Yeah, but still, yeah, but they never did because they did FF10 HD remaster, FF12 HD remaster. Yeah, they have never revisited.
Wait, what
13.
the fuck?
What?
So I was looking up to see when it came out on PC, and this game was released for iOS in Japan in 2015.
That's
what?
Very funny.
That's bonkers. What the fuck?
That seems ill-advised.
Yeah, don't play this game on your phone. But
anyway,
anywho,
Oh, also when I played it, Bernard, you said the only thing you remember is that the final cutscene was incredible. I didn't see the final cutscene. You know why? I got stuck on the final boss because this game has some really stupid game design issues that prevented me from beating the final boss. I could have if I'd done a bunch of grinding, but due to the way this game's mechanics work, I got to the end of the game and was at a point where I was pretty much unable to beat the final boss unless I did a ton of grinding, which I didn't want to do because I didn't like the game that much. So I've never seen the final cutscene. I don't know what happens.
Dope. I remember what I was trying to say when my brain completely emptied out a second ago. The reason I never played this game, now that I remember, was it came out on December 19th, 2009. Do you know what came out on November 9th of 2009?
But it wasn't November 9th. Was that Halo Reach?
It was one of the Halo games, but I was Halo kid.
November 9th was Halo 2. November 9th, 2004. September 25th, 2007 was Halo 3. Why do I know these things? I don't know. But yes, Halo Reach did come out in 2009, which probably explains a lot.
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah.
What a great game.
I just remember the release dates of games that came out on 9/11. Advance Wars, Super Mario Maker.
Happy 9/11, everybody. I know we're a day early, but you know.
ODST is the one I was remembering. ODST was September.
Yeah. Halo Reach was 2011 actually.
But yeah, I was mostly a first person shooter kid until I rediscovered RPGs when they were all in the bargain bin in college.
Yeah. Another thing, I was kind of a strange kid because for a good 5 years or so, for most of junior high and high school, the two kinds of games I loved with all my heart were Japanese role-playing games and Halo. Not all first-person shooters, just Halo.
Yeah. All right, we've probably vamped enough.
Yeah, we should talk about this game. Started.
Yeah.
Also, I thought while we were talking, I might have enough time to actually find my notes where I took my memorable moments in one of my 4 notebooks, but I didn't. So whatever.
So yeah, let's listen to some music from Final Fantasy XIII, and we will talk about the plot. Oh, Jesus, that was a full 30 minutes.
Wow.
We had a lot to talk about.
We did.
We're also kind of introing, I kind of introed the entire trilogy, so.
So it starts with a woman with a weird Australian accent, which I always thought was a fake Australian accent, but the voice actress is Australian. So
it's a bad accent. I thought it was.
I have words to say about her accent later.
I also thought Daphne from Frasier was doing a fake accent, but no, she's British. Anyway, So she says, the 13 days after we awoke were the beginning of the end. We see a train full of cloaked figures. A soldier walks down the aisle. This game starts with a train, just like Final Fantasy VII. Mm-hmm. The train bursts through some sort of barrier on the track, which maybe, I guess that was a trap or something. It's never explained. Anyway, it sets the guard off balance.
I think it's probably the, I actually thought it was the opposite. I think it is the exact same thing as FF7, where it's like a, we're going to check your IDs situation.
But it looks like it breaks, and the guard seems surprised.
No, I don't think
because
I read
it sets the guard off
right.
balance. And one of the cloaked figures takes that opportunity to attack the guard and smash some sort of device which removes the restraints that the cloaked figures had on the whole time. More guards enter. The cloaked figure who attacked casts away her cloak, and it's Lightning, the lady from the box art. She's hot. She owns a bunch of guards. There's another guy who we know is important because he has character design, and also because if you have the subtitles set to display the speaker name, it says his name is Saz. Mm-hmm. So anyway, Saz kneels down to help a child and says he's not a lessee. Saz arms the rest of the newly freed people and tells Lightning they all want to fight. She says, good for them. The train exits a tunnel into an amazing Technicolor sci-fi city. Basically, this whole game is an amazing Technicolor battlefield.
Yes.
Drones pursue the train. We see fighting happening throughout the city. The bad guys are summoning all sorts of wacky monster machine things? Question mark?
Yeah.
I don't know what they are.
Also, the graphics are happening a bit too fast. Are the things that they're summoning supposed to be like classic FF monsters? I think they're supposed to be.
They're just like dogs.
Some of them were like big. One of them looked like it might have been like a what's that one classic FF monster that's like a giant armored
one of
thing
them
with a
is
big sword?
I don't know, but one of them is called a beta behemoth.
Yeah.
Behemoth, that's what I was looking for.
Behemoth doesn't have a sword, it's just a big dog.
No, you're right. There's a different one I'm trying to remember the name of. Well, whatever.
Anyway, a giant scorpion robot monster lands on the train and stops it. The first boss is a scorpion robot, just like Final Fantasy VII. Lightning hops out of the train to fight it. Saz reluctantly follows. They fight the scorpion and win. Drones fly by. Saz asks Lightning if she's supposed. Saz asks Lightning, isn't she supposed to protect civilians since she's with Sanctum? He pointedly calls her soldier. Saz asks why.
Final Fantasy
VII.
In my notes, that's a sentence later.
Although unlike Final Fantasy VII, instead of the word soldier being in all caps, it just has a capital S. So you still know it's a special term that doesn't just mean soldier, but it's not in all caps. Yeah. Which means it's not an acronym, just like Final Fantasy VII.
Saz asks why she's trying to stop the purge. Lightning says she was a soldier, just like in Final Fantasy VII. Lightning runs off to do hero shit, and Saz reluctantly follows. We run down a hallway and fight more soldiers. Saz asks Lightning why she's going up against them. Better to die than get sent to Pulse, she says. It's hell without the brimstone. Saz says this place isn't exactly paradise, so Christian heaven and hell are concepts in this world. After a while,
Oh, also, this is one of my memos. Why you're mentioning that? Also, Earth is a concept in this world.
Yeah, I have that noted as well. That
was my takeaway from that line.
After a while, Saz tries to get some information out of Lightning again. She says she's after the Pulse, Fal'Cie. They steal an airship and head off somewhere, and we ask, what is a Fal'Cie? We see more fighting between soldiers and the apparent resistance as the Sanctum Primarch's voice echoes throughout the city. We know it's the Sanctum Primarch because, again, the subtitle says Sanctum Primarch. He says, on behalf of Cocoon citizens, I would like to thank our brave Pulse pioneers and express our best wishes for a successful relocation. Your noble and selfless sacrifice ensures the continued safety and peace of our society. Were it not for this remarkable gesture, every resident of Cocoon would be exposed to the dangers of the world below. by choosing to leave Cocoon and participating in this migration. But then a boot crushes the radio that was playing the message. We see the guy who did it, and he's obviously important because he has character design. Mm-hmm. His name is Snow. Another guy with slight
dripped up.
Yes.
Great design.
I didn't realize this in 2009, but he's hot.
Yeah, he's super hot. Here's my take about what makes his design so good. Yeah, he's got an extremely cool beanie. Yeah, he's got very cool Tetsuya Nomura, very FF8 style, like multiple layers of jackets and stuff, and a cool belt and gloves. But also, he's kind of unshaded. He's just a guy. But here's what makes him look. Here's what brings it all together. His stubble.
Yes,
he's got a medium amount of blonde hair on his chin, and it's like, all around, like beard and stash, and like that's what makes the design work. Like that tells you a lot about his character somehow. It makes him like, first of all, it takes him a little bit away from more of the bishy stuff that you usually get from Nomura, like mm-hmm. the squall type character, the more twink vibe. He's great. Snow rules.
Mm-hmm. Where was that? Another guy with slightly less character design than Snow comes up and says, "Migration, more like extermination." His name is Huge, which is great. Snow tells Huge these people need heroes, and Huge recites their motto: "The army's no match for Nora." Nora is in all caps, so we know it's not just some lady.
It's probably not an acronym, just like Final Fantasy VII.
Yes. We take control of Snow and walk to the Resistance front. He tells 3 Xenoblade Chronicles 1 reject-looking folks named Gatto, McKee, and LeBro that their enemies, the Cocoon Sanctum, their dreaded PSICOM, no less. Snow leads his band of heroes against the PSICOM troops. PSICOM is in all caps. We don't know if it's an acronym. They come upon a group of civilians. Snow tells them no one's moving to Pulse today. The civilians want to fight. The gang gives these untrained civilians guns. A woman joins the volunteers, though her teen son seems worried. Snow asks her if she's sure. She says moms are tough.
Yeah, I thought this part was hilarious because she is obviously important because she has character design, and she is talking to Hope, who has a lot of character design, and her name is Mother, while LeBro has a full ass name, and she's just a person. Yep.
One thing that's important to note here, and this is one of the main takeaways that I had from this game this week, is that this whole thing, you said that she talks to her son. Technically, the game doesn't. Well, I mean, you can put two together, right? But the way that it's directed, it's like this lady says, "I want to fight," and he's like, "Are you sure?" She's like, "Moms are tough," and she looks back to this person who is, very importantly, wearing a full cloak, like a Kingdom Hearts-ass cloak, so you can't see his face or anything. You can tell that he has hair that's the same color as her. But you can't really tell that he has, as Bernard said, quote, character design, because he's wearing his cloak, right?
Yeah.
But
I did not say he has character design yet.
Oh, okay.
I say that later after he casts off his cloak.
Gotcha. So anyway, so it's just some guy who we can use our brains to realize is probably her son, but the game's being very coy about it, which is important that it's doing that. All right.
Yeah, notes would be a whole lot longer if I put in all the vagueness that a piece of media can do.
Sure, no, that's true. This particular part, though, is one of the things I hollered about a lot this week. So,
Snow gives the last gun to a hooded figure who's staying behind with the rest of the civilians. We know she's important because we can see her cool hair underneath the hood. Also, her voice matches the opening voiceover. She voiceovers again, saying her first impression of Snow was that he was all talk. She does not practice proper gun safety etiquette.
No, she's not.
Oh my god, drives me crazy. Anyway, Snow tells her to keep the group hanging back safe. Snow's new recruits and the civilians part ways. though the teen from before seems worried about his mom, which means the person we saw before, like, looks back and is, like, worried.
Exactly.
After some fighting, SciComm aircraft blow up the giant bridge thing that they're all on, and the Resistance fighters start falling to their deaths. Snow ends up dangling off the ledge with one hand, holding the mom from before with the other. She asks him to get him home, and she slips from his grasp. The teen and the voiceover lady see this from another platform. Snow falls as well. Voiceover lady tells teen they have to move and slaps him, like you do when someone just watched their mother die. They run off. Saz watches the fighting from the ship he and Lightning stole. He says it's a massacre. Lightning muses that the Purge was conjured up so Sanctum could eliminate a threat. The Purge was never anything but extermination masquerading as exile. Saz asks if she knew this would happen, but she says she was in Guardian Corps, not SciComm, and we're all like, oh, yeah, Guardian Corps, obviously.
Oh, obviously.
Duh.
They muse on soldiers for a bit like this is a Metal Gear game. Saz mentions that the Pulse Fal'Cie and their L'Cie are enemies of the state during all this. A mini-boss flies up to their ship, and they fight it. After, a hatch on the roof of the giant cavern thing that the city's in opens, and out comes an enormous pillar of some sort and a bunch of aircraft swarming around it. The Sanctum Primarch's voice tells the deportees to put down their weapons, that their removal to Pulse is the will of the people of Cocoon, and if they refuse to leave, they will be brought to justice. Snow, who apparently survived his fall, sees this happening and cries out for Serah, whoever that is. Saz and Lightning talk like the Pulse Fal'Cie is in the pillar. The pillar, we later find out, is called the Vestige, and is in fact where the Pulse Fal'Cie is. Teen and voiceover lady remove their cloaks, and we now see they have character design. She gives him a gun, then hugs him and tells him to face it later. When I was rehearsing these notes, I found that was the only line I could do in her voice.
Yeah, she can't decide if she has all these different British / Australian adjacent vocal tics, but I'm not an expert, on these accents, but I'm 99% sure that she's combining the different things in a way that no accent actually does. She'll do her vowels this way, but she'll do her consonants this way, but she, doesn't do glottal stops on her T's, some British accents do and some don't. And the particular combination, I'm just I've never heard a single human being use this combination of accents at the same time. This is, you said that she's Australian. I still do think it's a made-up accent.
And compounding all of that, she's doing the cutesy anime voice acting, but then has an accent on top of it, and they don't match, and it's weird. Yeah.
Since we're on this topic, my theory this is a very mean theory, but I made it. I said, oh, I get it. And my girlfriend said, what? And I said, she's trans. My girlfriend said, what do you mean by that? And I was like, well, she has an accent that is very clearly made up and is stupid and annoying. She's overly performative with being nice and bubbly and sweet all the time, and she runs stupid. But she's also extremely hot. So all the stereotypes of if you're being very negative about stereotypical trans girls.
Anyway, Vanille runs off and Hope runs after her. Oh, I didn't say their names yet, but yeah, those are their names. Vanille voiceovers for a bit, saying she was always afraid. Saz asks Lightning how she figures the Pulse Fal'Cie is different from the Sanctums, which is a hell of a sentence.
Yep.
They abandon their ship and continue on foot. Apparently, I guess they've reached the Vestige at this point, but it's hard to tell what anything is in this part of the game. Snow wakes Gatto, who is unconscious, and they wonder about the fate of the others. Snow wonders who Mom meant when she said, get him home. All the proper nouns being flung about in this game, and we couldn't get one there.
No. Yep.
Gatto does
you think she could have said, get Hope home, and then he's like, who's Hope? I don't know who that is anyway.
But I've got something to work with. I can ask, do you know Hope?
Or like even a more normal thing to say would have been get my son home, right? Like that's what a normal person would say if they were about to die and they wanted someone to protect their son. And then at least he'd be like, okay, does this lady have a son?
As we have said before about JRPGs where people use pronouns in a weird way, it probably makes more sense as a thing a real person would say in Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was just about to reference that and be like, or she could have at least said, take him home.
Gato does not practice proper gun safety etiquette here. He gestures to the vestige and says Snow's lovely bride-to-be is waiting for him in there, and isn't it about time he picked her up? Snow and Gato steal some flying sci-fi motorcycles and find the civilians they parted with before, along with the other B-list named characters. Hope sees Snow from afar. Vanille asks Hope, didn't he have something to tell him? Before Vanille can successfully pressure Hope into talking to Snow, Snow takes off for the pillar. They find another flying sci-fi motorcycle, but Hope is hesitant to follow. He says if they go in there, it could make them l'Cie. Vanille encourages him, and they head to the pillar. They crash inside the pillar/vestige and finally introduce themselves to each other. Hope says even soldiers know to stay away from the Fal'Cie, and if you become a pulse l'Cie, you're finished. What were they thinking? Vanille says since they're here, they might as well look around. She climbs up behind a giant urn thing and finds a weird implement, which is apparently a weapon. Then they're attacked by a metal dog. Hope pulls out a weird boomerang thing, and they fight them.
Not being the Australian character.
Right. There are two Australians in this game, one we haven't met yet. But he's the one with the boomerang.
Yeah, so it was at this point that I realized that the criticism that this game is just a hallway was really just the first level, because this is also like there's only one direction you can go with just like chests on the side parts, but that's what Final Fantasy has always done with its dungeons, like since Final Fantasy IV. So it's like it's not.
Yeah, like it was a pretty boring dungeon, but it's also a pretty normal dungeon.
Yeah. So I think that much like with Mass Effect Andromeda, the memes were funnier than the truth, and so the memes became canon, even though this is just a Final Fantasy area.
Just like the laughing scene in FF10. Hey, it's almost like people just instinctively like don't take Japanese games seriously and don't think about the fact that things that might seem weird or unusual might actually have artistic value to them. Just a thought.
Yeah. Weird.
As we go on, we will see how the level design holds up.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Also, it might continue being hallways after this.
Yeah, this one and then the ice place are both like twisty hallways enough where it feels like a JRPG area.
Yeah, but at least as much of real dungeons as FF10 had.
Yeah.
I always thought the criticism of Final Fantasy XIII was weird, even though I remember sort of agreeing with it, because I was like, wasn't Final Fantasy X like mostly the same way?
Yeah.
Which, goes along with Film Crit Hulk's famous sort of theory of tangible details, which is FF10 and 13 are the same. So how come people don't like FF13 and do like 10? Well, because 10 is good. It's got a good battle system, a plot that makes sense, it's grounded in reality, and lovable, deep, well-written characters. If FF13 doesn't have those things, people aren't going to like it. But instead of realizing that's why they don't like it, they're like, oh, I didn't like it because it was hallways. Right? Yeah. It's like, well, no, you didn't like it for other reasons. You just don't have the analytical skills to understand your reaction.
Yeah. And I will also to give the naysayers a little bit of credit. Level 1 sucks. It is literally a hallway, and all of
you're literally walking down a highway.
Like the idea of going down a highway would be
go on, sorry.
Like it would be cool if like, oh, this highway is blocked off, and so we're going to like go down like to like a maintenance platform and cut across or do something and like do something with it. And this one they put like boxes in your way and you walk around the boxes and you walk down a street for the first hour of the game. So
yeah. And you know what? So was FF10, but except the difference is FF10's first level wasn't a level, it was a series of it was like FF10, they literally do spend a decent bit of time walking on a highway, except it's a lot there. If I recall, there aren't any random battles, for example, in FF10, in FF10's opening. So FF10 is not a dungeon. It doesn't give any indication that it's a dungeon. It is a series of cutscenes with battles. This, it's cutscenes and battles, but it is also navigating an environment and engaging with enemies on the field. In other words, because it feels like it's the more actual gameplay, you're criticizing it on the level of game design. Whereas FF10, you're not going to criticize the game design of the opening part of FF10 because there isn't any. It's just cutscenes and battles, so you know what you're getting. You're not going to say, "Wow, this game design sucks." You're aware that you're not really playing the game yet. You're just doing cutscenes and battles. Meanwhile, once you get to the actual first dungeon, which is when you're in like those ruins or whatever, it's like a real dungeon.
Yeah.
So back to the vestige.
Yes. After they defeat the metal dog, Hope says if Psycom finds them there, they'll be purged too. And I thought they were already going to be purged, but apparently not. Anyway, Hope says Pulse is hell on Earth. So as we said before, this game takes place on Earth. Vanille just hugs Hope and says they'll be okay. They hear Snow yelling for Serah. Snow's in a different part of the vestige, so he must be really hollering. We take control of Snow. Yes.
So at this point, or slightly after this point, I think. So I've never played these games, but I knew that Final Fantasy 13 2, the pink-haired girl you play wasn't actually Lightning. It was her sister, Serah. So when playing this game, and there is a pink-haired girl that's not our main character, pink-haired girl, I thought, oh, this is Serah. And so here, where we learn her name is Vanille and Serah still exists, I was like, oh, I actually know jack shit about this entire series, and I have no idea what's going on.
Lightning and Serah have a slightly different pink shade of hair than Vanille.
Yes,
that's true.
We take control of Snow for about 3 seconds, then we see Lightning trying to break down a door in the vestige. Saz says the door is winning. Lightning says, she should have listened. This is all my fault. That voice hurts my throat. She puts her hand on the door and says, I'm so sorry. Please let me in. The door opens. They fight their way through some metal dogs and other abstract enemies. Then Saz says there might be soldiers trapped in here, though by now they'd be Fal'Cie, not even human anymore, enemies of Cocoon. Can't show them any mercy, he says. We take control of Snow for another 3 seconds, then cut back to Hope and Vanille. They hear Snow yell, Hang on, baby! Your hero's on the way! Hope is pissed off at Snow for calling himself a hero. Vanille says Snow is coming their way, but Hope says nothing he says to him will change what happened. Vanille is like, we could just run away. They venture further into the structure. A bunch of shambling creatures surround Hope and Vanille. They're shambling straight for them. Vanille says they're Seath, which are l'Cie who failed. This is what happens when l'Cie don't complete the focus the Fal'Cie gives them. Snow crashes in and joins them in a fight against the Seath. After the fight, Hope can't bring himself to say anything to Snow, and Snow tells them to hide and he'll come back later and get them. As he runs off, Vanille asks who Serah is. Snow says she's his future wife, and a pulse l'Cie. He's here to set her free. Hope freaks out and asks why Snow wants to help a l'Cie. They're the enemy! How can he save a l'Cie and not... ... That's insane! Snow is like, yeah, and runs off. Hope collapses in grief. He says when they, meaning the Sanctum I guess, found the Fal'Cie the other day, he and his mother were just visiting Bodum. But then the army threw them on that train, and because of Snow, Mom is ... And now he wants to help a LaCie. Snow decides not to leave them alone and returns. Vanille tells Hope they should go with him, and that he needs to talk to Snow. If he doesn't take this chance, he'll regret it forever. That sounded more like Montana than whatever weird accents he's doing.
I think it wasn't too far off from it, though.
Yeah.
Back with the other party, Saz again asks Lightning what her deal is, and Lightning again trickles out some information. She says her sister is a Pulse LaCie, and the Fal'Cie was her captive, has her captive. Saz asks what her focus was. Was it to blow up Cocoon or something? Lightning says she didn't ask. Some Seaths start shambling towards them, and Saz awkwardly says that Lightning's sister might already be one of them if she didn't complete her focus. And even if she did, there's no way to turn a LaCie back into a human. There's no changing her fate. She'll live her life as a Fal'Cie slave. Don't make her suffer. Lightning tells him to just say that any LaCie should be wiped off the face of Cocoon. It's people like him that started the purge in the first place. They continue forward, still friends. Eventually, they see a young woman unconscious on the ground. It's Serah. Lightning picks her up and says they have to get out quickly. Saz sees the Pulse Fal'Cie's brand on Serah's arm and reaches for his gun, saying Pulse LaCie are the enemies of Cocoon. If she fails her focus, she'll become a Seath. So killing her is a mercy? Lightning asks. Serah wakes up. Just then, Snow and company arrive. Snow runs up to Serah and says they need to get out of here. Lightning says, hands off, I'm taking her home. Snow is like, sis, but Lightning says she's not his sister. He couldn't protect Serah. She's
right.
Yeah, they're not married yet. This is all his fault. I should stop doing that voice.
Yeah, it's killing you.
It really is, but it's funny. Serah, who just woke up, tells them they can save us. All of us. They can save Cocoon. Lightning is like, wait, was that your focus? Lightning and Snow both promise to protect everyone and make things right. Serah thanks them, then glows blue in levitations. She turns into a crystal. LaCie who fulfill their focus are transformed into crystal and gain eternal life. A crystal tear floats down and lands in Snow's hand. Snow is in denial, saying Serah's still alive. He seems to think he can just wait for her to come back. Lightning has skipped ahead to anger and punches the fuck out of him. And just to be clear, the 5 stages of grief model is not credible or accepted by modern psychology, but it's funny to talk about. The room starts shaking. Saz says it must be the army. Outside, we see aircraft swirling around the vestige. A voice says to leave no trace. The Pulse vestige never existed. They bring it to the center of the city and begin destroying it. Vanille asks, weren't they taking it back to Pulse? Saz says all they care about is getting everything from Pulse off Cocoon. I keep hesitating because I'm like, oh my god, I'm going to say the wrong proper noun in the wrong place. There's so many proper nouns to keep track of. Anyway, they want to get everything from Pulse off Cocoon, dead or alive. The shaking stops and a door in front of them opens. Snow steps forward. He intends to ask the Fal'Cie to save Serah. Lightning steps forward as well. The rest follow. They reach the Fal'Cie. It looks like something. Y'all describe
cool.
it.
Yeah, I want to give a bit of time here. So we'll explain the actual lore in a little bit. It's actually pretty neat, but basically at this point, if you've read the data log in your menu, or if you've paid a lot of attention to the very vaguely written dialogue, you can barely piece together that, yeah, a Pulse LaCie is basically a god. Not a LaCie, a Fal'Cie. A Fal'Cie is a god, and there's good gods that made the world of Cocoon, and there's bad gods that I guess are in charge of Pulse. And a Pulse Fal'Cie is some kind of eldritch god thing, and if you get near it, it makes you its slave and forces you to obey its will, which presumably is to destroy Cocoon. It makes you go against where you're from, right? By corrupting your mind. So the whole time, the graphics have been all like, there's been two kinds of graphics in this game. There's been insanely sci-fi, because, you know, fans wanted FF series to go back to normal, so we decided, what if we made it the most science fiction it's ever been? We're talking everything's floating in the sky, everything's going boop, 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 having levitation and force fields and glowy shit and shiny chrome, you know, just as sci-fi as you can possibly get, like aesthetically too, like slick. And then there's like crystal-y stuff, magic stuff. So like crystals, transparencies, glass, lots of particle effects, like things having blue or purple, like auras coming off of them. So anything that's not in the sci-fi, super slick, modern sci-fi realm is in this kind of like new agey kind of vibe of sort of abstract, not like, you know, dark fantasy, not fantasy in like the FF1 sense where you have goblins, but fantasy in this sort of new kind of sense where it's all very mystical and what is that kind of thing? I don't even know what that thing is. The reason I explain that is that you're expecting that, right? When you go to see the Fal'Cie, you're expecting a big godlike creature, maybe something that looks sort of like an FF summon, maybe, you know, with multiple heads and is glowing blue and beautiful, but it's not. It's like a giant steampunk computer. It's a machine with like gears and cogs and
big old blender hands.
Yeah, big old blender hands and like gears and like analog like hoses with like stuff going through the hoses. It's very shockingly different than anything we've seen before, which is really cool. And it's extremely cool that this thing that has been up until now billed as, again, a literal god of some kind is very clearly some advanced, though also very retro looking, strange, complicated industrial apparatus. It's I can't explain exactly more than that, and I don't know what it means. As having played the game, I believe it ends up coming out to mean nothing. But from a purely aesthetic standpoint, it's very cool and gives off very evil vibes. The idea that there's more history than just it's a god. It's like maybe it was created by an ancient species. Maybe these things that were created in a previous world have, you know, now rule the world of today. Very, I guess, which is kind of an FF10 vibe, like Sin, right? FF10. I don't know. It's cool as hell. We're about to fight it.
Maybe the Fal'Cie is from a future universe and got banished back to this universe.
Exactly. I very like how it's like, yeah, this thing again is a god that corrupts all who come in contact with it and is out for destruction. Let's fight it. We're not even level 1. We're level nothing because we haven't even unlocked the ability to have a level yet.
So because this is an RPG with monsters available on the screen that don't respawn, I was like, oh, I'm just going to enjoy my time through, make sure I kill everything so I level up. And then I'm like, wait, what level even am I? What I don't even get gold. All I get is stars. Like, what the hell? So then I was like, the second time you control Snow here in chapter 2, I was like, fuck it, and I just ran past everything. I was
I realized. Now there is a chance that, so the way this game works is you don't have levels. If you go to the menu screen, there's all the stuff that you would use to level up is not even present in the UI. So like, that's why I say it's like not even that you're level 1. It's that the game doesn't involve levels yet, which is really funny, trying to kill God right at the beginning of the game. But yeah, once you do unlock levels, it's not a level up system. It's like it's basically a sphere grid type vibe. Yeah. So you're just nothing. There is a chance though, Sam, because I noticed the same thing. And wait a second, all I get from this battle is if I get 5 stars, I might get like 6 potions, which is way more than I need and is stupid. So fuck it, I'll run past battles. Running past battles is kind of fun. It's pretty easy and fun. But there is a chance that maybe the game has hiddenly keeping track of your crystal points here.
I Googled it, and the consensus was that it didn't, but of course, that was
Gotcha.
a GameFAQs thread from 2009,
Right.
so who the fuck
I
knows?
just thought of that. The only way you'd be able to tell is if you played the intro of the game twice, once fighting every battle, once skipping every battle that you can, and then once you get to the part where you unlock the Crystarium, see how many CPs you get, right?
Yeah. I think you start with like around a perfect 300 for each person, so I think it doesn't count.
But it was quite interesting to be like, oh, I get literally nothing from these battles. This is kind of a weird experience.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if new Paper Mario battles weren't fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you could describe the Fal'Cie so vividly, because I saw it and it's like, I don't fucking know what to say about that. Snow demands the Fal'Cie let Serah go. He says he'll be the lessee instead. He's gone on to bargaining, but Lightning's still on anger. She attacks the Fal'Cie, but her sword just bounces off of it. She says it's this thing's fault the purge started. Serah told them to save Cocoon, and that means this thing needs to die. The Fal'Cie opens up, and we see, I think, something that is more like biological and crystally inside its steampunk shell.
Yeah. It has a big-ass crystal in the middle.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, it also definitely looks like Genova.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like, well, not just Genova. If you recall FF7, Genova technically is like a weird alien thingy that Sephiroth carries around with him. I know it's not really Sephiroth, whatever, don't at me. But the famous image of Genova is that Genova is in a big, like, tank, and it's hooked up to all these wires and a giant machine over it with a big, like, plate of metal with inscribed into it the word Genova. This has all of that. It's a big crystally thing. It's got a bunch of wires, and over it is a metal plate with an inscription of a different language that we can't read. So I'm like, oh, they're just, again, very clearly evoking a famous image from FF7 here, except with the difference that it looks like what I said earlier.
So you said the word Genova, and it reminded me, moment of silence for how badass the Genova fight with Aerith and Barret is in Final Fantasy VII Remake.
So good.
So fucking good. Okay, continue, Brad.
So Hope tries to run away, but a barrier appears and blocks the exit. Saz asks if Lightning really thinks she can beat a Fal'Cie. She's not even level 1 yet. She says she's doing this for Serah. Saz mutters a name, Dodge, and says he's in. They fight the Pulse Fal'Cie, which in the UI in battle is named Anima. Isn't that the name of...
Timor's Aeon? Yes, it is.
Yes. I don't think there had been something named Anima in Final Fantasy before Final Fantasy X. If there is,
10
I don't
invented
remember.
a whole lot of new sort of iconography, and FF13 reuses a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. So after the fight, they're all suddenly floating in a giant dark cavern. The Fal'Cie looms over them. Tentacles that look like they're made of light reach out and grab them all. The tentacles seem to brand them. Snow has a vague vision. It sort of reminds me of Commander Shepard's vision in Mass Effect, where you have no idea what's going on, but it doesn't look good.
Yeah, we don't need to explain it. You can't tell. There's a bunch of crazy stuff in some kind of giant tentacle god. It's the kind of thing you get if you make contact with like Nullhotep, right? It's that kind of shit. Yeah, it's what you'd expect.
So we see the vestige from outside, and it fucking explodes and wipes out the whole city. It falls into a lake below the city and sends waves going, which turn to crystal. We now see some Costa del Sol-ass town, just like Final Fantasy VII. A title card says, Day 11, the seaside city of Bodom. It's nighttime, and people watch fireworks. Yuge carries some drinks. LeBro tends bar and tells Snow he just missed her, but she'll be back at the usual place. Snow runs off. LeBro asks a mysterious woman with character design who it was she was looking for again. The mysterious woman mysteriously doesn't answer. Snow pumps himself up and goes to talk to Serah. Her arm is bandaged where the brand is. She could have just worn a sleeved shirt. She tells Snow she's hoping to be able to tell her sister tomorrow. Her sister will be so mad knowing she hid it from her. Snow says he'll take the blame for her. Serah looks at the fireworks and says, LaCie who fulfill their focus become crystal and are granted eternal life. Snow's like, if only they told you what to do. Then he says they'll figure this out and she'll never become one of those monsters. Serah doesn't seem thrilled about being a crystal either. Snow changes the subject and shows her that he got them matching pendants. He asks her to marry him. She says yes. Snow and Serah ride a flying motorcycle through the fireworks, talking about her being a LaCie and them being engaged, while a beautiful vocal theme plays. It's great. They totally kiss. Serah starts to cry.
Very good kiss.
Especially for this early in the PS3.
Yeah, people know, the game designer is always talking about how it's really hard to do to animate kisses. It's definitely easier when it's an FMV versus when it's in-game models, and this is an FMV. But still, considering how people have often talked about how smooches are very hard to do in computer generation, really good job on them for doing a darn good one.
Yeah, it does not just look like the two models are being smashed together, which is how it often looks.
Mm-hmm.
So Serah starts to cry. As they fly off into the night, she says, "Thank you, Snow." The gang awakens on the crystallized lake. Saz is like, how'd we end up here? Vanille's like, how'd we survive? Snow's like, Serah saved us. I don't know what stage of grief that is. Before Lightning can tell him he's stupid, a Seath appears. Snow runs up and blocks its attack. We see a pulse brand on his forearm, which glows as he punches the living fuck out of the Seath. He's like, how'd I do that? Hope says he used magic, the power of a LaCie. They're all LaCie now. They fight the Seath, and all realize they truly are LaCie. Hope freaks out. He says all of this is Snow and Serah's fault. Everyone disliked that. Vanille tells him everything will be alright and gets the gang to move forward. We take control for like 3 seconds before another cutscene happens. Lightning asks how they complete their focus if they don't know what it is. Vanille says she thinks she saw it. Saz explains that the Fal'Cie only gives you a hazy glimpse of your focus. The gang realizes they all had the same vision. Snow and Lightning say Ragnarok in scary, scary unison. We see the vision again. Some vague destruction. Hope's like, how are we supposed to know what to do from that? Snow says their focus must be to protect Cocoon, since that's what Serah told them to do. He runs off to look for her. The rest follow. The end.
And that's it. And clarify, that was everything before we got inside of the vestige was chapter 1 of the game. Everything inside the pulse vestige was chapter 2 of the game. And everything on Lake Brescia, of which we've just heard a little bit, was chapter 3. Why do we stop a little bit in chapter 3? Because we decided that was better than stopping at the end of chapter 2 because of some plot stuff. Because now the plot actually has started to happen. This game does have 13 chapters, but as you might expect, no, they're not all that short.
Yeah.
The beginning of chapter 3 really sets up, like, here's our situation.
Yeah.
So it just made more sense to go to the first save point in Lake Brescia.
Yeah, yep. and on top of that, on the PS3 version, you can tell you're at a end of chapter Luna and not a end of long cutscene Luna, because it will show the Final Fantasy 13 logo instead of your dude's head on your save file. But it doesn't do that on Xbox, and the achievement just happens. Oh, it does.
I was just being stupid, but the achievement does not happen until later.
Yeah. So it's a little hard to know exactly when the end of the chapter is, so it might be a running theme that we're like, oh shit, that was the end of the chapter, and we just...
One funny and weird quirk in this game is that it has 13 chapters, and as I mentioned earlier, I think the chapter breaks make no sense. Everything up until the end, everything up until the Anima fight is very clearly one plot event Making it 2 chapters is dumb. And also, the game makers probably even knew the chapters were dumb. You know why? Because they don't have any title cards saying Chapter 1, Chapter 2. As we've discussed before, when we played like Lost Odyssey or whatever, talking about disc changes, right? Signposting your narrative structure by saying, put in disc 2, or it's now Chapter 2, or it's now Act 3, can be a very effective dramatic device. The fact that they don't even bother to tell you when you've changed chapters probably means that they know that it's dumb. Sam made the insightful comment that chapter just means location. Yeah. Every chapter is one location. So chapter 1 was being on the highway of this part of town, basically. Chapter 2 was being in the vestige. Chapter 3 is being on Lake Brescia, and they do give you title cards when a location appears, like Kingdom Hearts does. Very similar kind of pan and show the name of the location. But that's weird. It's weird they don't have title cards. For chapters.
But let's listen to some more Final Fantasy 13 music and then talk about our memorable moments. Awesome. Maddie, what do you have?
Okay, so I couldn't find my notebook where I wrote them down, but a few I want to mention. These are all going to sound very negative, but I don't know. Overall, I think the game actually owns so far, so these are more just nitpicks. I want to briefly explain a little bit of the game's lore just because that's what is memorable to me. I think this game's plot is actually really interesting, even though they do a really bad job of portraying it. When you go into your data log and read what's actually happening, you find something neat, which is what the game's actual lore is. So here's the deal. Pulse is the land down below. Cocoon is a giant floating continent. You live in a floating continent in this game, which is interesting. Interesting recapitulation of Final Fantasy tropes, right? No one's been to Pulse in ages. No one wants to go there. Like they say multiple times, it's hell on earth. The way this game's lore works is that, or I already said the lore. You have the bad gods, the good gods, that kind of thing. What's going on at the beginning of the game, which I don't think is really clear at all, is to use a contemporary analogy, and this is why I find it interesting, is that it has very clear political analogs, is the government is doing a mass deportation of people who are seen as enemies of the state, which is pretty cool. Now, they're enemies of the state for lore reasons. It's because they've made contact with a mind control device. But basically what happened was this vestige was just part of the local... it was just a landmark in this town named Bottom. It was just there. It was like a big thing that was there. And everyone was like, what's that? We don't know. It's from the ancient days. One day, they find out that inside of the vestige is a Fal'Cie, an evil eldritch god. Fal'Cie, excuse me. So the government says what? They say, every single person in this entire town is now sus. And we're going to deport all of you. And as they make clear, the deportation is really more like they said they were going to deport them, knowing that they were probably going to fight back, and then they would have pretext to send in cops and slaughter all of them. That's actually a very... And then Snow's people are basically a local like community defense mutual aid group. Basically, they mostly just go around fighting like tigers when they get too near and distributing food to people, and they decide to take up arms against the government in kind of an insurrectionary kind of way. So when you think about it that way, it's not a weird plot at all. It's very much a plot about very real things that happen in normal life. However, at no point does the game make the political underpinnings of this plot clear at all. That the government is, that's really what's happening, right? And instead it's just this weird conflux of proper nouns. Because most of the dialogue in this game is characters saying, we gotta be heroes, or let's go guys, or we can do it, or chin up, worry about it later, instead of saying anything that would make any of what I just said clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found myself fondly thinking back on Final Fantasy VI, which begins with a Star Wars style text scroll, which tells you what the lore is, and it's really good.
Yeah, we didn't need like a lore.
We already have someone doing voiceover. She could have told us a bit more.
Yeah, and we don't even need a lore dump. What we could have done is, I know they wanted the exciting train intro basically, and I gotta admit, the start to train is very good in this game. But like, if the plot of your game is that people are hanging out in a town, and then one day the government has decided that they're all dangerous and they should all be deported, and they can either live with it or they can grab guns that were stolen from a local what do you call it? What do you call the kind of store where there's like overflow, like an army surplus store? They literally had guns that they had bought from an army surplus store, and decided to use those with no training to fight against the government. Why not show that? Why not start with people walking around the discovery of the polls? It'd be a little slow, but you can use filmmaking. I mean, FF12 managed to have a huge lore dump in the first 6 minutes of their game that was extremely exciting and famous, and everyone loves the intro to that game, right? They could have done it. It's just sometimes you can't quite do the immediate res thing because there's a little bit too much information you need to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I thought that once I realized what was going on, it was really surprising to me how actually a really good setup for a game's plot that is.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I didn't have all that information because I didn't read the data log. I think they could have started in media res, like had lightning killing people on the train and everything, and it's super great and exciting, and then like flashback to the events leading up to people being thrown on a train,
like
in sort of a montage. Yeah,
like the part where lightning's on the train, that's all clear. She's on this train. She was a prisoner. She frees the other prisoners and says, "Hey, fight." Really, it's once it switches to snow and you see that this entire area of town is now engaged in street combat. You're like, that's the part where you're like, why is any of this happening? That's the part where I needed context, right? Because of again the complex politics undergirding it.
And so when you do something in media res, you find a way to make people like ask questions or bring up in a way that makes sense the stuff going on around them. And instead of them doing that for like the political climate to know what's going on around you, they drop all of that for like the Fal'Cie and the LaCie and stuff like that. That's like still abstract to you. You don't know what any of that is. You're like, why are these people shooting at me? And they're like, eldritch gods exist. And I'm like, okay, but why are these people right now in front of me shooting at me? What's my motivation in this scene? And you just kind of don't know.
Also, an important thing is that the Guardian Corps that Lightning is a part of, Lightning basically is a cop or a former cop, whereas PsyCom is the CIA. Like, that's literally what's going on here, because they're being deported because they're under the influence of an external threat to national security. So that's what's going on there. It's an ex-cop fighting against the CIA.
Yeah.
But, man, there sure is a lot going on in this game that the game hasn't told us about.
Yeah. And here's what happens. Every time there's a cutscene in this game, a summary of the cutscene is put in your data log, and then you read that summary, and it explains a lot more about what was going on. And it's not like, oh, you weren't paying enough attention to get it. It's like, no, that was just not there at all. And you have to read the data log to understand the context.
Could we continue sort of doing it where I just write about what the game shows us, and one of you reads the data log and takes note if something is important, because it's already taking me extra long to get through this game because I'm taking notes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't want to read the data log.
Yeah, I think it's a good, and also it kind of mimics the experience of playing the game, where a bunch of bullshit happens, and then later you read about what it was.
Yeah, it's like watching Homestuck videos, and then eventually eventually you get to the summary, and you're like, oh, that's what's been happening for the past 1,000 pages.
The difference is that with Homestuck videos, like the finale, the finale of chapter 5, which is like a 10-minute long flash video, everything is in the video. It's just very fast paced and hard to understand. Whereas in this, it's like, no, they just didn't put it in there.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. But any other memorable moments, Maddie?
Sure, I have a couple. The reason I know one interesting bit of writing, I really feel like every part of the game's writing, and this actually comes from Tim Rogers' review, he supposes that the game's teams weren't communicating very well when they made this game because he has a hunch that the game's scenario wasn't locked down until too far into the game's development. So like literally one group of people was writing the cutscenes with people saying, let's save the day, guys. And then a different group of people was writing the data log explaining what the fuck is actually happening in the plot. And that's why there seems to be a disconnect there. Another team seems to have written the item descriptions, and kind of in a Dark Soulsy kind of way, I've actually found the item descriptions to be very cool. When you first start the game, Lightning has an item in her key items folder. She has a couple. One of them is, for example, she has one, it's like a gravity controlled magical device that cushions her fall when she falls. So she's not actually able to jump from great heights for anime reasons. She actually has a little device that does it. That doesn't explain why like Snow is able to do it partway through the game without any explanation. But whatever, at least they tried. But she also has a key item that is, damn it, I actually didn't get a picture of it annoyingly, but it's some kind of item. Let's just say it's a locket. It's not a locket. Let's just say it's a locket. And the description is like, this is a gift from your sister. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Right off the bat, she's got this gift from her sister. She's
survival knife.
There it is. It's a knife. And like, you wouldn't know that unless you went into the menu. Also, the fact that the fact that Snow's gun is an army surplus gun is the description of his weapon when you go into the menu. That's where it says that, which is cool. And then final thing, what's this? Yes. Final thing is, we're going to bitch slightly about the whole thing with Hope. Okay. The whole thing with Hope is that they're trying to be coy about who he is and why he wants to talk to Snow. There's a million scenes where he's like, I gotta go talk to him. I gotta tell him how I feel. And Vanille's like, yeah, I support you. And the game is directed and written in such a way as to make it seem like you don't know what the connection is between Hope and Snow. You don't know what Hope wants to tell him. Does he have a crush on him? Does he want his autograph? Does he want a father figure? No, of course, he hates his guts because Snow is responsible for his mom's death. That's what's going on there. And it's revealed later towards the end of today's events. But before it's revealed, they're very coy about it. First of all, I don't mind that they're coy about it. Yes, anyone with half a brain can figure it out, but lots of stories do that. They are subtle about something, but if you think about it, you can figure it out. Here's the problem. Those people apparently were not communicating with people in the data log, because the data log just explains it right off the bat. The first cutscene with Hope is like, it was Snow who convinced his mother to fight. It was Snow she was protecting when she died. And it is Snow who must be made to pay.
And it's so
it says
obvious.
That the first time you see Hope.
It's so obvious what's going on that I didn't even process it as them being coy. I just sort of processed it as Hope not being able to put words to his rage.
Maybe I was misreading it, but there were like a million lines where it was like, I gotta tell him ... and then something interrupts him, right? Which is the thing you do in anime when you're trying to hide a plot point, right? Anyway, but it's whatever it was, it's definitely very funny that I think the people who made the cutscenes were not communicating with people who wrote the summaries of the events.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One thing I get frustrated by the data log is every single data log is written as if it's the first chapter in a sequel to a YA novel where they kind of have to sum up the entire previous book, because
yes, they're repetitive.
when the kid is at the Scholastic book fair and the only Captain Underpants book they have is the Perilous Plot of Professor Poopy Pants, and they're like, that's great, I'm going to grab it, and they don't realize that it's not the first book. So they kind of have the first chapter is like, oh, by the way, he's our principal. Captain Underpants is a thing. Okay, now let's do the thing. Every single data log entry is like the first page of it is wasted saying what the last one said. And it's like,
or like even worse than that, like repeating, not even what the last one said, but the part that the last one said that was already repeating. Like in a given chapter, each data log repeats like the premise of what these characters are doing, and then goes on to say what happened in that actual cutscene. And maybe the idea is that you just might watch one of them to catch up because you totally kind of blanked out during that cutscene. But like when they give a little shiny exclamation point when you haven't read one, you're gonna read all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in addition to that, I forgot one more little bit I wanted to mention just to fill in the lore thing a little bit more. As Bernard pretty effectively, I think, explained, the Eldritch Gods, I'm assuming the good ones do this too, but the bad ones only that showed up so far. If you make contact with it, it forges a pact with you. And in that pact, it basically gives you orders. And you have to follow those orders. And you have two options. Either you follow the orders, if you don't follow the orders, you get turned into a fucked up zombie, and then you presumably get killed by a JRPG hero. That sucks. If you succeed in the orders, whatever it is, you get immortal life, but that means you turn into a crystal. And they don't really explain it, but it seems like turning into a crystal forever sucks. And you don't want to do that. You're trapped in this crystalline state. It's like, yay, you're immortal. I think maybe the Fal'Cie might think to them that it's cool to make you into a crystal forever. They're like, congratulations, you get to be a crystal. And you're like, no, that's a fate worse than death. So by the end of this week's play, first of all, shout outs to this game, I think. I think it's cool that every single character who's a party member has been introduced at this point. One of them has only appeared briefly on screen, but like, we're 2 hours into the game, and now every character is in our party at the same time. We've met all of them, and they're all facing a troubling situation. They've all been cursed, basically, and they're in a lose-lose situation. It's existentially awful that they're all just like, best case scenario is they all turn into crystals, and that's only after doing whatever the Fal'Cie wants them to do, which might be like do terrorism or something like that, right? Like blow up the government or something. It's cool. It's
I really like that.
It's a very strong, evocative premise. The problem is, anytime the characters decide to talk about it, instead of talking about it, they say anime platitudes about how they gotta believe in themselves. And I'm like, no, talk about your feelings. Talk about the problems and strategize and discuss what to do next. Don't just say, let's go, guys. Whatever.
Speaking of the fact that we have our full party of characters, I really like every character in this game. Starting in chapter 2, chapter 1, there were the people just said, "Let's go," proper noun, and that was it. But in chapter 2, they started having feelings, and again, like the idea that Lightning was a cloud ripoff that had no emotion and just walked down hallways. I literally think all of these people only played level 1, because in level 2 she has anger, which is an emotion, and it's not just I'm mad at the world because of angst. It's like, no, I'm specifically mad at the situation that's going on with Serah, and by extension you, Snow, because you tried to take her from me and I need to protect my baby sister. And like, those are real things, and I really liked that. And although I think the fact that Hope couldn't talk to Snow is dumb, but I like that he has like emotions going on, and like everyone so far is like pretty cool, and they are all hot except for, I think Hope is like 12, so he doesn't count. But like they all have fashion at the very least.
They haven't like fully introduced Saz's thing, but they've alluded to it at least. So like everyone has something going on. They alluded to him mentioning the name Dodge, who is probably like his son or something.
Yeah, but we don't know his like his backstory, but we know who he is, like, emotionally, and so he's very like reluctant, but you can tell he's like heart of gold, and he's going to like at the very beginning he's like, I don't want to go and do all the things, and then they're like, oh, but there's people we have to punch, and he's like, well, I have to go punch the bad people even though I don't want to.
I forgot about this.
Come on, Chocobo.
I forgot about this. Apparently I didn't get a screenshot of this because I'm a doofus. I don't know why I didn't take a picture of it, but another item description. Do y'all know why Saz has guns?
No.
I liked the line where he said, have these, might as well use them. And I assume the reason he has guns is because Barrett had guns.
Well, yes, but plot-wise, I unfortunately, again, I wish I'd taken a picture of this. I've forgotten what Saz's job is, but it's like...
These weapons are worn by civilian pilots for the purpose of self-defense in case of emergency landings in the wilderness.
Yep. Oh. So something you don't learn from the actual game's dialogue, but do from the menu, is that Saz's job is that he's a professional pilot, and he only has a gun in case he has to do an emergency landing in the woods and there's a tiger. So he's probably never used them before, which is super cool. That's such a rich bit of character development.
I had no idea there was so much cool shit going on in the menu.
Yep. The menu of this game, and again, what makes it cool to me isn't just that it's interesting, but that it's interesting in a way that is very actually grounded in reality, which is not the vibe you get from most of this game. Is that it's actually grounded in regular human concerns. Like, that makes sense. I could see a pilot in the real world today being assigned, maybe not like a typical like 747 pilot, but I could imagine some kind of pilot who's charged with delivering things to strange places being given guns for this situation, or at least being given some kind of form of defense, right? Or, you have flares, you have a whole bag of emergency items, that kind of thing. That's Saz's deal. That's Saz's deal.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I realized a second ago when I mentioned Chocobo that we haven't mentioned Chocobo yet. But Saz has a tiny Chocobo chick that he takes care of and is like his little buddy, and he just hangs out in his hair while he's hanging around, and it's awesome, and I love it.
Chocobo is really cute.
Another little bit of character thing. This is not in the menu, but it's in the cutscenes. During a couple of the cutscenes, especially the ones where people are like, Pulse sucks so bad. It's evil. Anyone from Pulse is evil. There's a lot of very conspicuous shots of Vanille being like, Anyway, let's go that way. So Vanille is clearly from Pulse, which is also cool because the reason everyone's being rounded up and exiled / shot is because they're suspected of being Pulse agents. And the thing is, they don't like being deported or massacred by the government, but they do also actually hate Pulse. So they kind of hate Pulse because if Pulse being bad is why their government is oppressing them. I mean, at least as far as we know. So the fact that one of them actually is from Pulse, like, they wouldn't like her at all if they knew that. That actually is a really serious problem that she's from Pulse. And of course, we're assuming Pulse actually is probably fine and their government is just evil and it's using fear-mongering to control the populace, but we haven't gotten there yet. So yeah,
I did not pick up at all that she was from Pulse, and I usually have a good finger on the pulse, but I'm about that.
That's karma for you ruining something about Chloe for me in Book Club no Kiseki.
Yes,
and something about Rin.
Even though I have played the game before, to be fair, and therefore know.
For the Rin thing, I was vague. You just happened to guess it, and I don't have a poker face, which is funny because this is radio. I should have a poker face. I could have just said nothing.
No, the second you said, I know her last name, I thought this was going a different way. My brain immediately put together everything about what's going to happen. I wasn't even guessing. I knew for a fact. That was then. This is now.
I will say, even though, yes, I do know what happens in this game, and she is from Pulse. No, they definitely signposted a lot, so I don't feel bad about spoiling this.
They do. The filmmaking does know that she's from Pulse. Yeah, I will agree to
Although
that.
I will agree, her hope being like everyone from Pulse is evil and it sucks, and then her just not responding to that and instead just hugging him and saying it'll be okay. I'll admit that that may not come off as conspicuous when hugging someone and saying it'll be okay instead of actually helping is what she does in every cutscene.
Yeah. And like all of the something's up with her sort of things was all like she's the narrator to the game. So I figured she was like some magic-y bitch or something. It was what that was.
I don't remember why she ends up being the narrator. I think it's for no reason. But we'll see.
And also remember that for most of what we played this week, I thought she was Serah.
I could see that being that. I could see that throwing you off the scent.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, another bit of subtlety that I actually really liked. The only part of this game where they were being subtle and coy and actually thought it worked. The whole game, or halfway through the game, right, this week, right before they start going to the vestige, they're like, something, you first hear the word Serah because Snow says it, and he's like, we gotta go save Serah, and you're like, what? And it takes a bit, and then eventually Snow is like, yeah, I gotta save my fiancée, Serah. And then it, like, a tiny bit later enough where it's still obvious without being cheesy, you switch to Lightning, and Lightning is like, I gotta save Serah, my sister. And you're like, oh, because up until that point, these plots have been completely unrelated. Everything involving that relationship is great.
I really like how you realize they're connected and they know each other. And also, when we see them get together, Lightning does not like him.
Yeah, it's really, really good actually how Lightning is not liking him in the very normal way. Like, she's not being a bitch. It's like, if your sister is engaged to some guy that you don't know super well, you're gonna instinctively kind of not like him because you're worried that he sucks and is bad for your sister. Also, your sister just turned into a crystal.
Yeah. Also, I like how Snow is like very clearly trying to ingratiate himself. He wants her to like him, but it's not happening.
Because he, like an idiot, definitely assumes that they'll be able to uncrystal Serah in like 5 seconds, and that therefore this is in fact his sister-in-law.
Yeah.
Sam, did you have any more?
So there's a part where Lightning is a protagonist and Saz is not. So Lightning jumps off all anime and cool off of this bridge, uses her fucking gravity powers to land superhero landing, and everything is awesome. And she like turns to Saz and is like, "Come on, your turn." And the way that he just like a kid getting off mom and dad's bed, like it's so tall, just like turns around, scoots one leg off, like trying to get down, and ends up falling, and Lightning has to catch him with her gravity powers. And it's just the way he climbs down is so good.
Yes, I love it because it's like if you needed to get off something that's 9 feet tall, you would like climb down and like hang off so you don't have to fall very far. But he's like 100 feet up. That's not going to make a difference. Also, you idiot! I love it.
Also, maybe this is a divergence of reading, but I think Sam slightly misread that, which is that Sam says that Lightning has to catch him in her technology. No. That little air bubble cushion was just still there. She was not paying attention and did not care.
She did not give a fuck.
She does her cool thing. He's like, oh, I guess I gotta follow her. And I'm thinking, Saz, no, you don't have the technology that stops you from dying. Did you not notice that she has a little thingy? You're gonna go splat on the ground. But it turns out that once you make the little air cushion to catch you, it just hangs around for a bit. So Lightning is just coolly walking away, clearly not concerned at all whether this guy decides to follow her or not. And luckily, he didn't go splat on the ground and die.
And also, after he falls and like looks really stupid, Chocobo lands directly in front of the camera and does a pose, and it's really cute.
So good.
Chocobo's real good. He just has it, you know. Like, for all of the in media res failings of this game, it also has a lot of really good in media res stuff. Where like, we don't know that much about these characters, but we know their personalities, and we know that he has a chocobo. And I'm thinking like, oh boy, I can't wait to find out more about why he has a chocobo. I can't wait to find out more about, why Vanille is like that. I can't wait to find out more about this or
what's
that.
her deal, you wonder?
I think the only character in media res that doesn't really work is Lightning's. Like, it takes her a while for us to do it, and she kind of just is blah for chapter 1. But everyone else, I enjoy that I don't know anything about them, and I'm learning. It's just, it sucks that I don't know anything about them, and I'm learning. And I also don't know anything about the lore, and I also don't know anything about the plot for 2 whole chapters of the game.
Come to think of it, it's kind of interesting. Now that I think about it, you're right, Sam. Lightning's the only character we don't really know why she's there. Like, Snow lived in Bottom, and the government tried to round up his neighborhood, so he's protecting them. Hope was just there on vacation and got caught up in it, and then got rescued and decided he should be the slightest little. Well, no, is just mad at Snow. That's his only motivation right now. Saz was just being deported for the same reason everyone else and got caught up in it. Vanille, we don't know why she's there, but we don't know why she's there for mysterious reasons. So it's very clear that something's going on that we'll find out later. Lightning, there's nothing mysterious going on. It's just that we don't know why she's there. She was she being deported along with everyone else? Well, no, she clearly had she very clearly was in control of the whole situation and was intentionally trying to save people. So she probably wasn't just captured along with everyone else and decided to make a break for it. She probably was maybe intentionally captured or was planning to do something else, but we have no clue why. So it is a little bit interesting that the main character is the only one where she's like, at some point, she goes to save Serah, but like, why was she on that train? Was she working with someone? She used to be a soldier. Why did she quit? So it's
she states her goal as going after the Pulse Fal'Cie and also saving Serah, but it's unclear why she was also, if she had a particular reason to also try and save people by going on the train, which maybe she was just doing that to be a hero?
I don't think she's from Bottom, is the thing.
She is from Bottom. It says so in the data log. Her, Serah, and Snow all know each other. They all live in Bottom.
Oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, to me, it definitely felt more like my sister fell in love with this guy, and I've had 3 conversations with him, but I guess that's not true.
It's weird because, like, in Star Wars, we know Luke the best, and we follow Luke, and he asks questions, and when we run into mysterious people like Han Solo, we figure a little bit about them along the way, but we have our, like, we know what our main character is about, and it's the opposite here, where we don't know shit about our main character, but we kind of know a lot more about everybody else.
And now that I think it's so it's actually, that actually explains her character a bit more, actually, because it's not my sister fell in love with some guy I don't really know. It's my sister fell in love with the guy who has first of all, everyone loves Snow. That's one thing that you get. All of his posse, they clearly admire him and think he's awesome, which so do I. But also, when you think about it objectively, he's just some guy. He probably works as like a bartender or maybe has no job and like goes out and kills rats for 1 XP every day and then gives speeches about how he's protecting his quote community. So like, yeah, he is all talk actually. He gives these speeches about how he's a hero and maybe even feels like a fantasy hero, you know, like I'm the warrior, and it's like, dude, you occasionally take care of a rabid dog.
Yeah.
So your sister falls in love with that guy.
Yeah. But this has almost been 2 hours, so we should.
Wait, I didn't say mine.
Oh, excuse me. Go for it.
I thought that you did, because you like riffed and added things to mine a lot. I thought you were sneaking them in. Go ahead and say yours.
I love all the voice acting, especially Lightning's. I think Lightning's voice
She's
acting
great.
goes a long way to characterize her, where the game isn't necessarily doing it itself.
Absolutely.
I just love her. Also, I really like Hope. He's just like this pathetic kid who doesn't have anything going for him, but he's very realistically and convincingly that. And I think it's great. I love a character who's like not cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
These characters are voiced by Lightning is Alicia Hillis, who I've never heard of. She's Liara in Mass Effect.
Oh,
So she's kicking ass, doing a great
this was
job.
a good year for her.
Yeah,
For real.
Also, Snow, for some reason I guess I didn't think about it. Maybe I would have figured it out if I thought about it, is Troy Baker.
Oh, really?
Being awesome. This is before he really blew up.
Yeah.
The guy who plays excuse me, Hope, is someone named Vincent Martella, who is known for being in the shows Everybody Hates Chris, which is not a cartoon, or Phineas in Phineas and Ferb.
Wow.
So he's the guy who plays Hope. And then the guy who plays Saz is also a not animation actor. He's best known as for Howard in The Cosby Show. I don't know who that is. Other live action characters in other television shows I haven't heard of. And also some voice acting here and there, none of which you would recognize at all. And then finally, Vanille is voiced by a lady who doesn't have a Wikipedia page.
She has a behind the voice actors page, and she was Reyna Temple in Star Wars: The Old Republic, and then 3 different versions of Vanille. So that's all she's done.
Yep. And then finally, the only other one that has a Wikipedia page is Serah, is voiced by Laura Bailey, which is a name I do recognize, and it looks like she's...
Laura Bailey's a big deal. I can't bring to mind what her other roles are. But
she was
she's
Abby in The Last of Us 2.
I haven't played that. But
she's Mary Jane Watson in Spider-Man 2018.
Yeah. So she's been in about a billion things. So cool. Good, good for her. But she's Catherine in Catherine, the one with the C, not with the K. But yeah, so in typical Final Fantasy fashion, a couple of big names. Basically, the only big names are Troy Baker and the one I just said, Laura Bailey, and then a
Troy
bunch
Baker
of...
wasn't even big yet.
That's true. And then a bunch of fucking random people.
But they're all great.
Yeah, they all do really, really, really good job. Big agree. Except for Vanille, but
I even like
Bailey's
Vanille's performance. I just think her accent is weird.
what's that?
Laura Bailey is Trunks.
What?
No way.
Yeah.
Like
She's
Kid Trunks.
Kid
I'm
Trunks,
assuming.
yeah.
That rules.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Good job, cast of this game.
Hell yeah. It's like not as star-studded as Final Fantasy X, but still has Troy Baker in it. So
It's weird that they didn't get what's her name? The lady who's in fucking everything, including Final Fantasy X.
Tara Strong.
It's weird they didn't get Tara Strong, considering that Vanille is in the game.
That's true. Remember when Tara Strong was in Lost Odyssey and was not doing Tara Strong, and it was weird and really
so
good?
Yeah, she was so good.
So good.
It was so weird hearing her not do her thing.
Mm-hmm. But
anyway, that's all my memorable moments.
Dope. So, thanks to everyone who has donated on the Ko-Fi to help us unlock LongCast. Next week we're only on the hook for chapter 3, but if again we get to the end of chapter 3 and nothing really happened and we play chapter 4 as well, it's 1 or 2 chapters basically every week until we get to the big chapter, which might be 2 weeks in and of itself. Who knows? But yeah, so other than that, check us out on the web at www.rpgbook.club, where you can donate, help us play the rest of the series, play 13-2 and Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13, or get access to the Book Club no Kaseki episodes a month before everybody else, or just donate because you like us and we're cool and you want us to be able to buy video games that we can then play for you. But for RPG Book Club Longcast, I have been Sam Allman.
I'm David Bernard Hauk.
And I'm Maddie Grace Weapon.
Toodaloo, folks.
We need a special outro for this series. Let's go after the Fal'Cie. I don't know.
It's a Fal'Cie.
No, because all the iconic Final Fantasy tunes are not in this game.
I know.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that.
The prelude's not in there. The prologue's not in there. I don't remember which is which, but I'm still upset.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that when I was talking about how there's such a clean break from the series. Like FF10 didn't have the prologue, but it did have the prelude. Prelude is the one that's arpeggios.
Yeah.
Here, okay, so prelude makes sense. You always hear it at the beginning of the game. That's why it's called prelude. Prologue, that makes sense. It always plays during the ending credits. That's why it's called prologue.
It also sometimes plays during like the intro movie.
Prologue played near the beginning of the game in Final Fantasies 1, 2, 3, and 4. After a certain point, I guess that stopped making sense, so it became more something you'd hear at the end of the game. Although at FF12, it did show up in the attract mode. So it was literally at the beginning of the game before you even hit start to start playing. But yeah, FF13 has none of those. Not even the victory music. Very wild, actually. Very bold.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Toodaloo.
Yeah, the Cinemark right by my house, well, it's not right by my house, but it's the closest theater to my house, is doing all sorts of special movie screenings. Like, I think later this month they're showing Citizen Kane, and I'm like, seeing that on a big screen would probably be pretty cool.
It's a great movie.
It's so great to watch it on a big screen. So, History of Motion Pictures, we had a lab every week, and that lab was everybody getting together in fucking Corpy's auditorium on that big ass screen.
I was there for that.
Movies.
Yes.
And that's when I first saw Citizen Kane, and I was like, oh, this movie was made in the 40s, but it feels like it was made this week. And like that's the best part about it, is it's somehow timeless while everybody still is talking with 1940s.
Its filmmaking techniques are so cutting edge that it feels like a period piece. I that was my second time seeing it. My first time I saw it was in high school, and I thought it was I rented it from the library, and like I really liked it. I thought it was a good movie. But really seeing it in that little in the sort of Corpy auditorium for film class was like, I was like the dramatic power of the filmmaking really comes through on the big screen.
I also love how I call that Corpy's room, as if I didn't have a psychology class and a math class in that room. But whatever.
Me too.